Hey everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief. I want to start off with some breaking news. This is Bloomberg.com reporting that an appeals court is keeping the doors open during the immigration fight. So now the immigration fight goes to the Supreme Court. In the meantime, the executive order that Trump issued banning travel or delaying travel for people for X number of days coming from certain countries is still on hold. And this brings me to something that has always troubled me about the way people think. And just, what it does is it highlights just how effective a lot of these propaganda campaigns are and these information campaigns are that are disseminated through media sources, and just how easily people take it as gospel when they hear it. The fact of the matter is we are a nation of immigrants, okay? Unless you're a Native American, you don't have ancestry here. It came from somewhere else. And how hypocritical are we to tell anybody that they can't have an opportunity to come here if they follow the rules, okay? That means that you have to come over a certain way. There's probably some paperwork that you'll have to do or whatever. There's some hoops you're going to have to jump through, just like any other country. But if you jump through those hoops and you do what you're supposed to do, that there's a place for you to come. That was the whole idea of the United States. It's when I see people, and of course I understand why people feel the way they do, especially towards Muslims and all that kind of stuff, because, the Muslims are going to get us. It's asinine. Totally and completely asinine. Totally and completely hypocritical for anybody to feel that way. And let me tell you something. If you feel unsafe, then kindly do a package check, okay? Because we live in probably some of the easiest times that humanity has ever seen. It could be a whole lot worse, Believe me, the Muslims aren't going to come and get us. We should really take a look at who and what drives all of the terror, and who and what drives all of the fear, and who and what drives all of the outrage in the world. It's on record. The people that perpetrated some of the most gruesome attacks that this country has ever seen and or took part in them have come out on the record to say why they did it. theantimedia.org did a fantastic piece. 9/11 Mastermind's letter to Obama. Here's why we attacked America. Okay? This was penned by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Now, we can say that 9/11 didn't happen the way that they sold it to us. And I can basically say that with an absolute certainty. That's not to say that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed didn't have a role to play in this. I think he did. And so the Miami Herald actually obtained and published an 18-page letter that was originally written in 2015 titled Letter from the Captive Mujahid Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to the Head of the Snake, Barack Obama, the President of the United States of America, the country of oppression and tyranny. Now remember, we're not sold that here in the United States. We are a bastion of freedom and democracy that we spread throughout the world, right? That's what people believe. That's what you're taught in your public school, civics, or history, that the United States is the liberator of the world. When in reality, folks, we're not at all. We're not at all. It goes on to say this. It says one of the main reasons for 9/11, according to Mohammed, is one terrorists have referenced before: American foreign policy. His explanation is rooted in both history and in current affairs. This is what he wrote. Now, I want everybody to listen to this and let it sink in. Quote, "The American people were misled by the Johnson administration and the Pentagon in waging a war in Vietnam that cost 58,000 U.S. lives and millions of Vietnamese lives and ultimately led to a humiliating defeat." Of course, there he's referencing the false flag attack that Johnson perpetrated on us in the Gulf of Tonkin to sell the American public a reason to go to war in Vietnam, and an illegal one at that. Mohammed also focused on U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and the Muslim world specifically, providing a long list of reasons why the, quote, U.S. reaped what it sowed on 9/11. He goes on to say the Indonesian dictator Suharto, when his army led massacres, slaughtered hundreds of thousands of land farmers. Of course, that was a U.S. government and CIA-backed regime. He also cites America's notorious desire for oil. He's referencing that the U.S. built, quote, military bases in the Arabian Peninsula in Tabuk, Dhahran, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, and the UAE, which, by the way, is prohibited by Sharia laws, to secure a nonstop flood of oil to their countries at the cheapest price. He continues, he says, to support the dictatorial rule of monarchical families and oppressive, corrupt dynastic regimes and looting the wealth of the Muslim Ummah population and to accomplish U.S. military objectives there. Does this sound like an idiot to you? Because it certainly doesn't to me. And that's the thing that we all have to understand, is that, you know, outside of our little fluffy, happy United States, everybody else pays attention to what we're doing because it directly affects them in one way or another. And if it doesn't now, it eventually will, especially if their government isn't playing ball with the Western banking syndicates and the powers that shouldn't be. I mean, this is reality. Now, if you go to the antimedia.org, and I'll put this link down in the box below, you can read the contents of this unbelievable letter, and it really breaks it down. He said that, you know, when he talks about Israel, that Israel has the right to defend itself, he says, why can't you or any American president before you say that the Palestinians have a right to defend themselves against Israeli crimes? He says the answer is very clear, but you can't say it because your lords will be very angry. Of course, he's talking about the powers that shouldn't be. Who that is, we all know. And then, of course, they're beholden to your special interests, to your oligarchs, to your mega corporations like your Blackwaters, like your Halliburtons, the military-industrial complex, Big Pharma, you name it. He names it. He lays it all out in this letter. So even if 9/11 happens entirely differently than they say it did, I can tell you right now, it's very similar to an FBI operation where they set up terrorists to go do something, and then they blame it on them, or they come in at the last second after giving them everything, providing them everything, giving them all the training, all the ammunition, all the equipment, all the money to finance it, and then come in at the last minute, whoa, look at what we stopped. Only there's been a couple of times where they've let it through. The Hegelian dialectic, folks, is very powerful and has been used. It's probably one of the oldest tricks in their playbook. Problem, reaction, solution. That is what they use. And so when we take a look at some of the things that President Trump is trying to push forward, it's very concerning. Now, he's throwing a lot of smoke out there. Okay? One of them is, now he's saying in 2 to 3 weeks, there's a phenomenal tax cut package coming. Now remember, it's like I've said to you before, and I'll say it to you again. They're going to throw crumbs at us to back us down because there's a lot of tension out there, and a lot of people are paying attention, and a lot of people want accountability. But there's nothing that does away with that better than throwing crumbs at us, like animals at the zoo. And that's what they do. So this is what this is. It's a way to throw some oats out, put some hay out in the field so we can graze on it a while and not pay attention to what's going on. A lot of it has to do with foreign policy. But let's see what some of this fodder is. President Trump, this according to news.grabien.com, says, President Trump to his conservative critics, I read you loud and clear. After coming under criticism for many a night, especially on the right, most prominently the Drudge Report, for seeming to move popular campaign promises like repealing Obamacare and tax cuts to the back burner. This morning, Trump promised that a phenomenal tax cut package will be presented in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Now, this was announced as he was hosting airline executives at the White House. He says, we want to help you realize these goals by rolling back burdensome regulations, and you people are regulated probably as much as almost anybody. And he says, we have a regulatory morass that's a disaster. But he says lowering all the overall tax burdens on American business is big leagues. And that's coming along very well. He said, we're way ahead of schedule, I believe, and we're going to be announcing something, I would say over the next 2 to 3 weeks, that will be phenomenal. Now, when he comes to tax cuts, he's talking about tax cuts on corporations. And what he's looking at doing is lowering the business tax, the corporate tax, from 35% down to 15%. And apparently he's talking about a middle class tax cut. I don't know. We'll have to see how that plans or how that plays out. And that's a good thing. Don't get me wrong. But it's crumbs to the animals at the zoo. That's what it is. Because there's other things that are being put into place that are very troubling indeed, and things that we should be paying attention to, but it's so nice. It's so easy to be mystified, to be hypnotized, to be taken up by the crumbs that they throw at us when we're so hungry, starving even, for real change, for the better. And they know that. So throw us some crumbs, and meanwhile, here's what we'll do. The Daily Sheeple had a great article today. They mirrored commondreams.org. Here comes Gitmo 2.0. Yeah, that's right. So there was a push for a long time because of pressure to close down these prisons that took advantage of indefinite detention without charge or trial. Because here in the United States, that's illegal via the Constitution. Now, the Constitution only applies if we apply pressure. If they don't feel any pressure, they'll feel no reason to follow it. So that's very important to understand. And a lot of people will come back at me and say, well, Common Dreams, that's that left-wing crazy website. No. Listen, there's truth on both sides of the fence, even though it's an imaginary fence. You see, people on the left and the right, we're all on the same team. We're human. We just get sold the false left-right paradigm to keep us divided. But really, we should be debating these very important issues without any sort of bias of left or right, up or down, black or white, rich or poor, Christian, Jew, Muslim. It doesn't matter. That does not apply. But they make it apply. They make it applicable via their propaganda campaigns, and the people eat it up, and the rest is history. But here comes Gitmo 2.0, draft executive order. Trump planned to expand offshore prison. It says U.S. has institutionalized indefinite detention without charge or trial. It says a draft executive order reported to be circulating within the Trump White House calls for keeping the notorious Guantanamo Bay prison open and allowing for individuals associated with ISIS to be sent there. This being a plan described by one expert as toxic policy and a national security disaster. This is a great example of how American foreign policy not only comes off and is oppressive in nature to people in countries we are invading, and that's what we're doing. And then we're surprised when they attack because we threaten their peace and their security, because all they want to do really is be left alone. Let's be honest. And just because their cultural differences, because their values aren't in line with what we're programmed to have, and that's what it is, let's be honest, then we feel, oh, well, you guys live out in the desert. You're different than we are. You're Muslim. And we judge. Who the hell are we to judge? Just think about that. Every one of us out here in the United States, over in the Middle East, in Europe, down under, every single one of us have skeletons in our closet. And none of us, not one of us, have a right to judge another. Especially over beliefs, especially over cultural differences. It doesn't matter. And we have to understand that 99% of these, quote, extremists that perpetrate these acts are often pushed by provocateurs from the CIA and other clandestine agencies to advance an agenda, to control you, to keep that matrix ever evolving. That's what they're doing. And now what they're doing is they're expanding Gitmo 2.0, they say. Gitmo 2.0. So they're going to be holding ISIS combatants at Guantanamo. And because you have the authorization for use of military force, which the Obama administration used to claim legality for its war on the Islamic State, they can not only do it there, but they can also do it here. Because, of course, ISIS fighters are just flowing over the border of Mexico into the United States, sitting back and waiting for the word to attack. And so more fear, the more and more erosion of our rights. That's the game plan, folks. That's what they do. And we have to stop it. We can't allow this to go on anymore. And we can't be duped or distracted by the crumbs that they throw us. And that's really what it is at the end of the day, folks. Crumbs. Look past it. Not saying don't take it. Hey, I like tax cuts any more than anybody else. I love them. But don't make that your singular focus. Pay attention to what's going on in the background, because they have very dire consequences for us in the long run. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief, and I'll have one again for you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.